Serious, what is the scariest theory you know about? I saw one about the potential of a specific type of supernova that would essentially fire out beam of radiation, or some other kind of energy. If it hit Earth we would see the entire sky covered with auroras. This is the ozone layer burning off and the last thing we would see before we all die. Guess at least we get a pretty light show to end on. I remember hearing one theory that every time we die, we instead instantly switch to a near exact universe where we didn't die, as if nothing happened. Other people's death remain the same since it's not yourself. For example, if you were to be hit by a car, in other people's perspective you die, but in your own instead of dying, it's a near miss, or you're injured but don't die. That the Big Bang is just a never-ending cycle. Each time the universe explodes into existence it will inevitably end, then the Big Bang restarts. Each iteration of existence is just a rerun of the Big Bang. The theory is likely called Big Bounce. Don't forget the Big Crunch, which definitely ties into that. Basically we know that the Big Bang exploded in all matter and the universe is still flying outward from the Big Bang. The Big Crunch is the theory that everything will eventually slow down and then stop and slowly be pulled back to the spot that the Big Bang happened, probably to start it all over again. As Arctic permafrost melts, it will release diseases that have been frozen in the ground for thousands or tens of thousands of years, and life on Earth will have no immunity to them. Wonder how the world will react if a disease suddenly infected the whole world. We're good at following orders and social distancing so it won't spread that fast, right? We don't know whether the universe is in a true vacuum lowest possible energy state, or a false vacuum a local low, but not the lowest. If the universe is a false vacuum, at any point, at any moment, a quantum tunneling event could occur where that point spontaneously decays to a true vacuum. If that happened, a bubble would expand from that point at the speed of light that radically altered physics, instantly annihilating everything down to the subatomic level. Since it travels at sea, there'd be no warning, no way to see it coming. When it reached us you'd just instantly blink out of existence. Even if we are in a false vacuum, such an event doesn't become likely for at least 10 circumflex 139 years. But it could happen at any moment at any point. It could have already happened and the bubble could be heading straight for us, about to end us at any t. The butterfly effect kind of freaks me out because it suggests that every little action could be part of a series of events that leads to something much more impactful. For example, I could drop a pencil, which distracts someone for a few seconds, causing them to miss the bus, and after a few billion seemingly insignificant events World War III begins. Equally likely that you dropping the pencil prevents World War III. The two possibilities cancel each other out so you don't have to worry about it. I just woke up, so the explanation might be a bit confusing, but humans are very good at seeing patterns, even if there are none. Looking at the brain, we can see parts of it that process some things, but we can't see where consciousness comes from. What is, we don't have a central me, but have a bunch of different, unrelated functions, and one of those is creating a pattern that isn't there. I feel like when I read this over and over I understand it a little more. It seems so right, but I'm not awake yet to expound on subject. The possibility that I am just a brain in a jar and my entire life is just something my brain fabricated to keep itself entertained. Everything and everyone I have ever known is a figment of imagination. Every method I can conceive to prove this idea wrong is also just part of the dream logic my brain has created to make sense of the illusion that is my existence. Might not even be a brain at all. The true reality might be completely different with completely different physics, laws, and rules. Ours are the only ones that make sense to us because they're the only world we've lived in. You could be a pile of goop connected to a grid. That AI, self-replicating, and immortal, has a better chance of colonizing this galaxy than biological life does. Think about it. It took hundreds of millions of years for life to get to this point. From a ball of proteins to multicellular creatures to plants and animals, took an incredible amount of time. Back in the late 1970s, I was playing with computers that had 4K of RAM. 40 years later we have incredible computing power in the palms of our hands, hundreds of gigs, and terabyte micro SD cards. Robotic manufacturing of everything from circuit boards to vehicles is the norm. Where will this tech be in a couple hundred years? Will we be able to design and launch spacecrafts that are capable of self-maintenance for the hundreds, maybe thousands, of years it would take to reach the nearest exoplanets? Once they arrive, will they be capable of self-replication? Machines don't need food and water. Machines aren't susceptible to disease or mental health issues. Machines don't seek power or authority and don't victimize each other for amusement. What if the purpose of human life in the universe is to facilitate the creation of AI and launch its spread into the wild? This could backfire. Read the Berserker series by Fred Saberhagen for more. Fractalization theories. Everything that exists is a tiny part of a bigger thing. In a brief summary, our galaxy is a part of space, but is space a small part of something larger? Think of a smaller object containing its own galaxy. A speck of a rock may contain its own microscopic cosmos that we cannot see. It may be composed of its own organisms smaller than a single electron, and that civilization is more advanced than we are. We know all matter contains their own gravitational force, but we don't exactly know why. I've always believed this, but I never knew it had a name. Forgive me for the poor job I'm about to do describing it, since I forget the name of it, but I recently read here on Reddit that as humans have a defense mechanism where we can see something that is non-human but mimicking a human, such as a realistic wax figure, and know that something is off. The theory was that in our evolution there was a predator that could mimic being human that we had to adapt and develop this defense mechanism for. The rebuttal to this theory was that it comes from us seeing dead bodies through sickness or disease and not blatant Neanderthal murder or death from an animal. Through our evolution and learning that something is wrong, out of the ordinary and a cause for concern. The Uncanny Valley, it freaks me out too. I feel as though the rebuttal is the accurate reading to why, but it's kinda fun to think of the other possibilities. So I can't remember the name of it for the life of me, but I learned this in a class I took last semester. There's a theory that says that there is a point that no intelligent life can get past, no matter what they do. Diving deeper into this, some people claim this is why we haven't found any other intelligent life forms. I think the truly scary part about it is that we won't know we are at that point until we are living it. It's called the Great Filter. You can think about it two ways basically. We have already passed the filter, and therefore we may really be all alone in the universe. Or, we have yet to hit it, and there's this looming thing that will keep us from advancing. I tend to believe we have yet to pass the filter. The Great Attractor. Over the years, scientists and astronomers have charted our space, and we have a fairly good understanding of what's out there. Planets, moons, stars, space, etc. Gravity plays a big role in showing what is attracted to what. Moons around planets, planets around stars, stars around black holes. But people have begun to notice that everything out there in the galaxy is slowly but surely, scooting left on our map of the cosmos. Everything and anything is drifting ever slowly in one united direction, and something hidden and astronomically massive is dragging us and all known and unknown matter towards it, and we have utterly no say or action in the matter. That the reason we've not detected other life forms is because they're hiding from a galactic level predator species that hunts through radiation emissions. Not so scary, but some people say we are all dead now, but our consciousness keeps repeating memories of our lives like an endless loop, and it's the reason we experience deja vu sometimes. Just knowing the sun will eventually expand and envelop the planet, leaving a burnt and blackened French fry behind, is upsetting enough. Even if all these other things never happen, that eventually will. Imagine being around as that slowly becomes reality. Seriously, one day the Grand Canyon will no longer exist. There will be no physical trace of us ever having existed at all. Humans are alone in being intelligent life in the universe because we're the first to have had this combination of nonsense happen, which led to the opportunity for us to do everything we can. This isn't that scary, but I often think about the last Thursday theory. The theory goes that our galaxy, planets, people, memories, etc. were all made last Thursday. All of the memories we have actually just been put in our brain. I love this theory because it's obviously very unlikely, but it is still kinda plausible in the way that if there were any higher being, they could just create us out of thin air. Kind of like when you make yourself as a sim and your significant other. They have just been created, but obviously they have a backstory together because they're romantic partners. I don't know. I just think it's such an interesting theory to think and read about. Thinking that we're actually all characters in a simulation or we're just reliving our memories in the 7 minutes before we die is also fun to think about. 100 years from now the majority of us will be dead. We will just be another page in the history book. We may think that our life was very valuable, but we are just another century passing by. Just like how a lot of us don't think about how the 19th century as much. It will be impossible to remember all 7.5 billion of us living in this century. The next century will just remember the ones that help advance our species. This is exactly why I feel a constant need to do something absolutely revolutionary. That if time travel is possible here or in any other of the possible universes, that this may be the least cruel that would still be self-sustaining in the general trend of time. The Holocaust may be less cruel than a universe where Hitler succeeded and purged impure and undesirables from the planet, even among his own race. Heck, it may have been better than a universe where Hitler didn't do anything and without his success the general anti-Semitic and eugenically obsessed culture was allowed to meander on its own, slowly choking out and murdering cultures in much larger and less newsworthy ways. The torture and enslavement, the endless illnesses and abuses, and the laissez-faire attitudes we are seeing right now could very well be an improvement on a universe that would criminalize biological flaws and seek to only abuse criminals. Quantum suicide, the idea that there's hundreds of me that died and I'm one of the few alive in an infinite number of worlds. There's nothing after we die. All of our memories, experiences, thoughts, feelings, etc. just immediately blinked out of existence, and this seems like the most likely and realistic possibility to me. It will be just like before you were born. There's nothing to be afraid of, it didn't hurt, it wasn't scary. The fact that if aliens do exist, they are either billions of years ahead of us, or we are billions of years ahead of them. It would be virtually impossible for them to become sentient around the same time as us, especially if you consider how old the universe actually is. That the great biological filter is still ahead of us, and that humankind has no real purpose because it was destined to die like the millions of other species before. Regarding the great filter, it could be anything. It could getting off the planet, or not destroying ourselves, or anything. But the presence of a natural filter would explain why we detect such few life forms in space. Let's just hope that the filter was make stupid cat videos and upload them and that we've brilliantly passed, because if not then there is very little chance for humanity to have a future at all. Few life forms in space. To quote Spaceballs, we ain't found crap. It's debatable and contentious. Free will versus determination, and evidence from neuroscience that suggests people's actions occur before their thoughts. This would suggest that we have no control over our actions and are merely pawns in a bigger picture. Sarah, it's both comforting and scary. From what I understand about it, we mostly operate on autopilot and have our decisions made up before we're even aware of it, but we also possess a certain veto function that we can use to choose to dismiss that autopilot proposed decision. That it is impossible to live in the now. There is a delay in what you physically feel and what your brains monitor because of the speed with which your nervous system transmits these signals. This makes the concept of now biologically impossible to grasp. On the other hand, that delay is so small there's nearly no difference between real now and our now. Us living in a simulation. The scariest part about it is knowing that we have absolutely no control over our lives and anything bad that happens is just inevitable. Something goes wrong and you try to learn for next time. Doesn't matter, it was always going to happen, and no matter what, it's likely going to happen again if it happened the first time. The fact that anything bad can whenever and we have no control over it is the scariest thing. Solipsism, which is a minfuck. Essentially, life is a holographic reality created by your own mind. It is the idea that you only know your mind, therefore you might be the only mind that exits. Since your mental state is private and unobservant to anyone else, you can only be sure of your own thoughts, and everything else is fake. The Uncanny Valley, you know, the sense of unease and discomfort you feel when you look at an irrealistic animation of a human face, like imperfect deepfakes or flawed CGI faces in movies. It implies that there might have been a point in our species' evolution where we had legit reasons to be afraid of something that looked almost human, but wasn't. I'd imagine it's because of death. If you came across a dead person, you need to be able to tell they're dead and not just sleeping. Something seems not quite right with corpses, even though they look identical to a living human. That or there was a predator that could mimic humans, which is now thankfully extinct. The I takeover theory. There are several variations of the theory, but the basic gist of it is this: eventually, society will be filled with billions of robots who can perform human-like functions. The theory is, some of these robots will become so intelligent and so erratic that they literally malfunction, go crazy, and eradicate mankind. Meaning, we would all die of slow, painful deaths of being beat to death by robots, metal pieces, punches, pounds them, etc. And the scariest part about this theory is it won't be quick. Some variations of the theory say it could take years for this human extinction to occur. I don't know how realistic it is, but the late Stephen Hawking thought it sounded possible. I prefer the benevolent I idea. That adaptive I would eventually start making decisions that seem like malfunctioning, but are actually just more steps ahead than we can fathom. Downside is that we become totally dependent on I and basically superfluous. The theory that the reason aliens haven't contacted us is because they're watching and waiting for us to be ready. The more I see of humanity, how we act under pressure and when confronting our darkest parts especially, makes me worried that we'll never be ready, or that we'll wipe ourselves out first. The Femi Paradox. Basically, we are either alone in the universe, or we are not. Both are equally terrifying. If we are alone, we will likely be stuck to our local solar system with a very basic understanding of what lies beyond, and practically zero chance of ever actually venturing beyond the outer reaches of our orbits. We may be doomed to live, grow, and die on a ball of iron and silica orbiting a giant ball of hydrogen in some forsaken arm of one of literally trillions of galaxies, each with trillions of their own stars. How many other habitable planets are there orbiting all those stars? How many have life that is advanced enough to receive and understand the signals we've been sending out for the last few decades? How many are a few million years ahead of us or behind us in terms of their development? What if we are truly unique and we suffer a mass extinction that completely destroys life on Earth, down to the cellular level? If we are not alone, any civilization that is capable of reaching us from outside our local systems is for sure going to be many thousands, or possibly millions, of years advanced beyond anything we can comprehend. There's a ton of terrifying implications that can arise from this regarding life in the universe, but the one I find most scary is that if we ever do make contact, humanity would stand zero chance in a war against extraterrestrial life, because to get here in any reasonable time frame they would need an understanding of warp speed or superluminous travel. On that same theory, we could be alone now, but not in the past or in the future, and we never know about it. It is not only space and distance, but time as well. The idea that human life as we know it is just a tiny blip on the timeline means there could have been literally millions of those tiny blips of 300.000 years already and we will never know about them. The theory that the universe is full of extremely hostile alien races whose strength is unimaginable, and that wiser races keep a low profile and try to hide. We're the idiots who are screaming to be found. Humanity is in a dark jungle full of predators, and instead of hiding we're screaming at the top of our lungs. Mad lads. Maybe not too scary, but I heard a theory that there are infinite Big Bangs. Basically the universe undergoes a Big Bang, expands, and then collapses back into itself, triggering another Big Bang. And this happens an infinite number of times, meaning that molecules and atoms are constantly shuffled and that every possible combination of molecules will come together and disperse an infinite number of times, meaning that you have existed a countless number of times before and will again. The buttons on traffic lights do nothing and it's just done on what color the other lights are. It's all just a way to get us to wait. Okay, after reading the others this one cracked me up. Space-time is doomed. Donald Hoffman is a scientist who proposes that human brains understand and perceive nothing of ultimate reality because evolution selected for survival traits, not traits which would enable us to perceive the true nature of existence. Much like a trash can icon on your desktop is a useful fiction that helps you use the computer. But there is no real trash can, and when you drag and drop a file you aren't throwing anything away. The reality of programming language is behind the user interface, and binary behind that, and physical electronic circuits and components behind that, etc. Hoffman goes on to argue that the physical space-time world we inhabit is such an interface and not real. Unlike the simulation theory, he argues that simulation theory always assumes base reality is still a physical space-time universe. Hoffman has many podcast guest appearances and a TED Talk. The expanding universe theory. Well, we know it's expanding, but the theory that says it has a limit of expanding and once it reaches that, it'll snap back and crush the universe before expanding again and reforming it. The powerlessness and idea that tomorrow, everything I know could be crushed is a bit terrifying. Maybe it wouldn't snap back instantly, so you'd have a few thousand years of seeing the universe get smaller. If time travel does exist, every change to the past would feel absolutely seamless taking effect, meaning you would never know. Strange matter. Well, it's more a hypothesis than a theory at this point, but it's pretty weird. Basically, inside neutron stars may form strange matter, new kind of matter, that is more stable than atomic matter we all are used to. If a piece of this strange matter was to hit Earth, depending on some properties this can have, it may be more stable than regular. It could potentially start matter decay. That would result in all matter on Earth, including your bodies, would decay into strange matter, basically killing whole planet in a very worrying way. When neutron stars collide, the stuff inside gets spewed out everywhere. This means that at any moment a piece of strange matter could hit Earth. The dark forest theory. All life desires to stay alive. There is no way to know if other life forms can or will destroy you if given a chance. Lacking assurances, the safest option for any species is to annihilate other life forms before they have a chance to do the same. And here we are broadcasting balls into space. That there's a possibility, albeit very slim, that the species populating Earth are the only life in the entire universe. It's horrifying to think that it's possible for us to be completely alone, isolated on a small rock that's rocketing around a blazing ball of gas. There is a character from Marvel called Ex-Nihilo that has a great take on it. It's our job and duty to propagate life in the universe. We are the single thing standing between nothingness and infinity. The elites of America have pitted people who think they're Democrats and people who think they're Republicans against each other in so successful a fashion that the majority of non-elites are fooled into thinking people from the other party are the enemy, while the elites sit there spinning their webs of corruption into the Senate and into our laws to keep themselves uncompetitively rich. And the majority of us just sit there and hate each other instead of figuring out a plan to rid ourselves of this corruption. There is no true struggle but class struggle. Everything else is division and distraction. Entropy can't not be removed. Once you created it, you are stuck with it forever, and the universe will eventually become a homogeneous boring soup because of it. That the recent interest in exploring space, SpaceX, Chinese going to the moon, NASA looking to establish a moon base soon, going to Mars, is because something is coming. If you vibrate a thing at the right frequency, it will disintegrate. The same can be applied to human anatomy in some sort of Dr. Manhattan level weapon. Pop. Vibe check. Forgot what they were called, but here are two of my personal favorites. The theory that everyone and everything around you is a figment of your imagination, and the theory that time has essentially stopped for the human race. As in, this is as far as we can get in terms of advancement. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.